Hi there, Fright fans. Welcome back.
Yeah, man, you got your bags packed, right? The creepy cab driver's outside waiting on us.
My bags packed? Creepy cab driver? What are you talking about?
Huh? Murphy's already getting in the car with him.
Wait, what?
We, yeah, man, are going on a scarecation.
Well, guys, I guess I should go get Murphy. But before I do, I would like to share these 3 deliciously creepy stories. So, without further ado,
Murphy, hey, they're pulling off.
let the stories begin. Like millions of other people, I recently downloaded Uber, an app that will send a taxi then automatically bill your credit card at the end of your journey. I've used it a couple of times and, well, it's worked well. This was until last week, when I checked my recent card transaction to find that it had been billed for a ride that I hadn't taken. At first I thought that there must be a problem with the app, and it must have just charged me incorrectly. But when I loaded it up, I found that it was my recent ride. The one that I was charged for was there. A Tuesday night, 7:05 p.m. $34, and my driver was called X. Needless to say, I was a little confused, because as far as I could remember, I stayed in Tuesday evening and just watched some TV. I decided to conclude that it must be an error on Uber's part, so I emailed them explaining the issue. Within a couple of days, I got a response saying that they had been in touch with the driver, and he confirmed that he picked me up from my address and took me to my location. He explained to Uber how he has a car camera in case of situations like this one, and gave them a screenshot of me sitting in the back seat. Uber attached the picture to the email. It's definitely me. I don't know how, but I was definitely in that car. I checked the app again, this time looking at where the ride was from and to. The tracker showed how it picked me up from my house and took me into the middle of nowhere. I live in a somewhat built-up area, but this ride took me miles away from it all, a much more royal location, and the ride ends in the middle of an old country lane, with nothing for a while in either direction. I was getting confused and concerned now, still not believing that I could have possibly taken this trip without knowing it, and where I would have gone to anyway. If I did go, then how did I get back? I decided it was best I try to find some proof that I was at home the entire night. I decided to ask my neighbor, and sure enough, they said how they remember seeing me leave the house and getting into the taxi recently. He told me that he remembered it well because he had just got back from walking his dog at the time and tried to say hi to me, but apparently I completely ignored him and walked as if in a trance to the taxi. So I got in the taxi. I went to God knows where. I got back, but I don't know when. I was at work the next day. It's just that evening that is a blank in my memory. Where did I go? Who is this X guy? I'm not sure where I went, and I'm not sure I want to know. My phone just bleeped a message. It's from Uber. X will arrive in 14 minutes. I was leaving Hemlock with a friend from out of town around 1 o'clock in the morning. I live nearby, but my out of town friend wanted to hit a house party deep in Daly City with some people he knew. For context, we were a little drunk, but not that sloppy drunk or slurring our speech drunk. The ride to Daly City was uneventful. My friend navigated from his phone and Google Maps, but when we arrived, we realized that the cabbie never turned on the meter. He told us the fare was $80 plus a tip. We told him that we weren't gonna pay that, but we would give him $40 plus a tip, which I thought was generous actually, because we just wanted to get out of the cab. The cabbie starts to come unglued and he's shouting at us that we need to pay him the $80 plus a tip, screaming this, obscenities, and pounding his hand on the steering wheel. So we tell him we're not gonna pay him the $80 plus the tip, and he screams, "Fuck you!" So now the cabbie is driving like a suicidal maniac through Daly City. He's blowing through stop signs and red lights and driving around 60 plus miles an hour in a residential neighborhood. But here's the really creepy part. Dude removes the plastic lock handles from the back of the cab. So we were locked in there. I can't imagine any legitimate reason to do this. So my friend called 911 and the operator asked him to stay on the line and update him with our location, which we kept doing. We got to Highway 280 and the cabbie was speeding and swerving between lines and driving maniacally. Eventually, 2 sheriffs pulled the car over near Highway 101. Luckily, the cab pulled over and the cops pulled him out at gunpoint. They asked us to tell them again what happened, and then gave us a ride back to my place in San Francisco. So yeah, that was pretty freaky for me. I tend to not use Uber anymore. I had just gotten off the plane, but it was late, like around midnight, so my friend wasn't gonna pick me up. Now I didn't have much money, but I had just downloaded Uber, and I had my first ride free, so I decided to go ahead and use it. My phone was dying, so I put it up and didn't even bother checking who the driver was. I waited until I saw an old red van with a pink mustache driving up and parked near me. The van looked a little weird. There was dirt and some mud on the side of the van, and the mustache was kind of tilted to one side. I wondered if this was some kind of joke. I heard the Uber drivers could be quite eccentric, so I figured this guy must have gotten off on being totally creepy. I opened the passenger side door and motioned for him to open the back of his van so I could put my luggage up. "Oh, I got those for you," he said, stuttering. I tried to check my phone to make sure this was my driver, but my phone had died. He grabbed my bags and loaded them into the back, and I sat down for the long ride. My friend lived a good 60 or 80 miles away from the airport, so I knew this would take a little while. The guy got in the driver's seat and started off. When I tell you, the guy's ride was a little off, I'm not kidding. There was this really weird smell in the car, kinda like something really sweet. But it also smelled quite musty. I don't know. It was a weird smell. And then there was this radio station he was listening to. It was playing standards from, I think, the 1930s and 40s. Just a fuzzed out, crackling radio station full of lo-fi songs. The guy himself was hulking, massive, must have been 6 feet 7 inches tall, and he wore this old army jacket and some gray cargos. He had long, stringy hair on the sides, but the top of his head was kind of balding. His nails looked dirty. I could see them as he clenched the wheel tightly. Every time we'd go under a street lamp, the greasy, dirty nails shined in the orange glow. He was pretty scraggly, and I was always under the assumption that Uber drivers were harmless, artsy, urban types. This guy did not strike me as artsy. We drove for a few minutes before he took an unexpected turn onto an empty road that leads into the woods. I knew this wasn't the best way to my friend's house, so it perplexed me that he had taken this route. "Hey, this isn't," I started. "No, it's alright. I know a better way," he said, cutting me off prematurely. I raised an eyebrow at him, but he just looked ahead. I turned my head and settled into my chair. It was a little weird, but he was the driver. He had to know where he was going, right? We drove down an empty stretch of road. I could see the dead trees stretching out into the night sky like spider legs. It was one of those nights where the moon was heavily obscured by gloomy clouds. The lane lines were old and faded, and the road itself was cracked from years of neglect. I couldn't see much beyond the headlights that illuminated the road. He was quiet, awkwardly so. I figured I should speak to him since we were going to be traveling together for a while. "How long you been doing this?" I said, my eyes still ahead of me. "Not too long," he responded, turning to me to flash a crooked, yellow smile. I smiled back. I didn't have much else to say, so I started to fidget my hands. We drove for a little while down this road, and then I noticed him taking a turn onto a dirt road. I was starting to get nervous and a little angry. "Hey, this isn't," I began angrily. "Don't worry about it. I know what I'm doing," he interrupted firmly. My stomach was starting to turn. What the fuck was this guy doing? Where the heck was he taking me? We turned off onto a stretch of bumpy dirt road. You like scary movies?" he said to me as we popped up and down the rutty path. "Yeah, I guess," I responded nervously. "I like the really violent ones," he said keenly. "Yeah," I said, my voice cracking with the slightest hint of fear. afraid of dying? I looked at him, my face now pale, my hands sweating, and my stomach curling into itself. I don't know, I never thought about it. He laughed and just kept looking ahead. I felt this dense mass in my throat and swallowed tensely. I bet you and I would be good friends if we knew each other, he said. He never once glanced over at me. He had this twisted smile on his face, and he just looked ahead at the road the whole time. Don't you think so? Yeah, I bet we would. I squirmed awkwardly in my chair. Where are we going? It's my secret, he said, his face still dressed in a distorted smile. I started to sweat. I was scared. I was genuinely terrified. I would have started yelling at him, fighting him, but something inside me said to stay calm. That, or I was in such a state of disbelief. I did not know how to react. I heard something move violently behind me. I watched him, studied him with one eye, carefully before I slowly turned my head to look into the back of the van. That's when I saw it. There was a large stained burlap sack sitting on the floor not far behind me. In the darkness, I noticed there was a pool of some kind of black fluid underneath the sack. I watched it for a second in disbelief. This wasn't happening. Was that really a body back there? Was that blood? The bag then lurched forward, rolling across the shaky floor like someone was moving inside of it. But it made this sound, this growling sound when it did. I turned back toward the front of the vehicle. I was gasping for air. And then I noticed out of the corner of my eye, the driver was looking at me. He had turned his head and was smiling at me. He then pulled out of the rough stretch of road, and I noticed we were on my friend's block. He pulled up to my friend's house and went and fetched my bags, then handed them to me. He waved goodbye as he got back into the driver's seat and drove off. I stood at the curb, staring at the van as it faded into the distance. I was in shock. I walked to my friend's door and he greeted me. I was pale and out of breath. So he asked me what had happened, but I wasn't quite sure what had just happened. I went inside, sat down, and told him about the ordeal. When I went and plugged in my phone, I checked my messages. I had a few missed calls from the Uber driver I had originally scheduled. Apparently, he had waited for me at the airport for about 15 minutes before leaving. When I saw his picture, I realized it wasn't the same man that drove me. I tried looking into the strange driver, but I could not find anything about him. I had a lot of questions after that night, but one thing I knew for sure, I would never use Uber again. If I had one of those thumpers in my chest, Murphy, you would have given me a heart attack.
Okay, I'm sorry.
What have we always talked about?
I know.
You are never supposed to
Eat the cab driver, right? He said he wanted a whip, so I whipped him apart. What can I say? I'm a monster.
Well, guys, I hope you enjoy these tales.
Yeah, and you know, be sure to leave some comments below. We would like to hear some of your scary experiences.
Indeed. Stay creepy, you guys. Till next time.